The bar was a haze of neon and regret, tucked in a grimy corner of downtown Seattle. I, Lucas Bennett, 28 and freshly unemployed, sat hunched over a sticky counter, nursing my third whiskey of the night. The bartender, a guy with a beard like a forest and eyes that had seen too many sob stories, didn't bother asking if I was okay. He knew better. I wasn't. My phone buzzed against the bar, a reminder of the world I'd been dodging. Notifications from job boards, unanswered texts from my sister, a news alert about some protest downtown. I ignored them all, my thumb hovering over the contact I hadn't touched in 2 years, Ethan Carter. The name alone was a punch to the gut, dragging up memories of late-night drives, his laugh in my ear, and the fight that tore us apart. I'd been the one to walk away, too proud to admit I was wrong, too scared to face what we could have been. I don't know why I called him. Maybe it was the whiskey, loosening the chains I'd wrapped around my heart. Maybe it was the ache that never left, the one that whispered his name every time I passed the coffee shop where we used to argue about books. My finger hit the call button before my brain could stop it. Lucas. His voice, rough and familiar, cut through the static of my thoughts. I froze, the bar's noise fading to a dull roar. You there? I miss you, I said, the words spilling out like they'd been waiting 2 years to escape. My voice broke, raw and unguarded. I shouldn't have called. The line went silent. I thought he'd hung up. Then, softly, where are you? I mumbled the name of the bar, my address, something incoherent about being sorry. I don't remember hanging up. I don't remember much after that. Just the blur of another drink and the cold walk home through rain-slicked streets. My apartment was a mess, takeout boxes, unopened mail, a life half-lived. I collapsed onto the couch, still clutching my phone, half convinced I'd dreamed the call. Until the knock. I stumbled to the door, heart pounding like it was trying to break free. There he was, Ethan, drenched from the rain, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, his green eyes burning with something I couldn't name. He wore the same leather jacket he'd had back then, the one I used to steal when the nights got cold. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was thick, heavy with everything we hadn't said. What are you doing here? I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. You called, he said simply, like it explained everything. You said you missed me. I wanted to laugh, to cry, to slam the door and pretend this wasn't happening. Instead, I stepped aside, letting him in. The past followed him, curling around us like smoke. We stood in my cramped living room, the silence louder than the rain outside. Ethan looked around, taking in the chaos of my life. You're a mess, Lucas, he said, not unkindly. Yeah. Well, you're here. I shot back, defiance masking the fear clawing at my chest. Why? He ran a hand through his wet hair, water dripping onto the floor. I don't know. I heard your voice, and I couldn't stay away. 2 years ago, I'd ended things because I thought love wasn't enough. Ethan was a dreamer, a painter who saw beauty in everything, even me. I was the pragmatist, the one who thought stability mattered more than passion. We fought over money, over my long hours at a job I hated, over his late nights in the studio. I told him we were too different, that love couldn't fix us. I walked away, thinking I was saving us both. I was wrong. Now, here he was, standing in my apartment like a ghost I'd summoned. You can't just show up like this, I said, my voice shaking. Not after everything. Then why'd you call? His eyes locked onto mine, unflinching. You don't get to say I miss you and expect me to do nothing. I didn't have an answer. The whiskey was wearing off, leaving me raw and exposed. I was drunk. I said weakly. It was a mistake. Bullshit. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the rain on him, the faint cedar of his cologne. You meant it. I know you. Lucas. You don't say things you don't mean. I wanted to argue, to push him away, but my body betrayed me, leaning toward him like it remembered what my mind tried to forget. Ethan, we can't. A crash of thunder cut me off, rattling the windows. The power flickered, plunging us into darkness for a heartbeat. When the lights came back, Ethan was still there, closer now, his breath warm against my cheek. Tell me to leave, he said, voice low, daring me. Tell me you don't want this. I opened my mouth, but the words wouldn't come. Because the truth was, I didn't want this. I wanted him. And that terrified me more than anything. The air in my apartment felt like it could snap, taut with everything unsaid. Ethan stood inches from me, his challenge hanging between us like a live wire. My heart was a traitor, hammering out a rhythm that begged me to close the distance, to erase 2 years of regret with a single touch. But I stayed frozen, caught between wanting him and knowing I didn't deserve him. Say it. Lucas. Ethan pressed, his voice softer now, almost pleading. Tell me to go. I swallowed hard, my throat dry as sandpaper. I can't. He exhaled, a shaky sound that mirrored the storm outside. Then what are we doing here? I didn't know. I didn't know how to bridge the gap between the man I'd been angry, scared, rigid and the one standing here, unraveling under his gaze. I turned away, pacing to the window where rain streaked the glass like tears. You shouldn't have come, I muttered, more to myself than to him. This was a mistake. Then why's your hand shaking? He asked, stepping closer. I could feel the heat of him behind me, a presence that filled the room more than the furniture ever could. You're scared. I get it. I'm scared too. I spun around, anger flaring to mask the truth. Scared. You're the one who showed up at my door in the middle of the night. Ethan, what do you want from me? I want you to stop running. His voice cracked, raw and unfiltered. You ran 2 years ago, and you're still running. From me. From yourself. From whatever this is. His words hit like a slap, stripping away the lies I'd told myself. I'd spent 2 years building walls, convincing myself I was better off alone. That love was a luxury I couldn't afford. But here was Ethan, tearing them down with nothing but his presence. I didn't run. I lied, my voice barely above a whisper. I let you go. There's a difference. He laughed, a bitter sound that didn't reach his eyes. You let me go? You broke my heart. Lucas, you stood there in our old apartment, told me we were done, and walked out. You didn't even look back. The memory burned, sharp and vivid. I could still see the hurt in his eyes, the way his hands shook as he packed his things. I told myself it was for the best, that we were too different, that I was saving him from a life of arguments and resentment. But standing here now, I saw the truth. I'd been a coward. I thought I was doing the right thing. I said, my voice breaking, I thought you'd be better off without me. Ethan's face softened, just for a moment. before the hurt crept back in. You don't get to decide that for me. We stood there, the storm outside mirroring the one inside. I wanted to reach for him, to pull him close and beg for forgiveness. But the weight of my mistakes held me back. Instead, I sank onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. I don't know how to fix this, I admitted, the words tasting like ash. Ethan hesitated, then sat beside me, close enough that our knees brushed. Maybe we don't fix it, he said quietly. Maybe we just start over. I looked at him, searching his face for a hint of mockery. But all I saw was sincerity. It was too much, too raw. I stood abruptly, needing space, needing air. You want coffee? I asked, grasping for something normal to anchor me. He raised an eyebrow, a ghost of the old Ethan who used to tease me for my terrible coffee. Sure. But don't expect me to drink that instant crap you used to buy. I managed a weak laugh, grateful for the break in tension. In the kitchen, I fumbled with the coffee maker, my hand still unsteady. Ethan followed, leaning against the counter, watching me like he was trying to memorize every move. Why'd you call tonight? He asked, his voice gentle but insistent. What changed? I focused on the coffee grounds, avoiding his eyes. I lost my job today, I admitted. And I don't know. I was sitting in that bar, feeling like my life was falling apart, and all I could think about was you. He didn't say anything, but I felt his gaze, steady and unflinching. When I finally looked up, his expression was unreadable, a mix of hope and caution. I thought about you too, he said. Every damn day. The coffee maker hissed, filling the silence. I poured 2 mugs, handing him one, our fingers brushing for a split second. It was enough to send a jolt through me, a reminder of how easily we used to fit together. We sat at my tiny kitchen table, the mugs steaming between us. So what now? I asked, my voice barely audible. Ethan took a sip, wincing at the taste. God, you still buy the cheap stuff. He set the mug down, his eyes locking onto mine. Now, we talk. No running, no hiding. Just you and me. I nodded, my chest tight with a mix of fear and hope. For the first time in 2 years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back. The coffee was bitter, but the conversation was heavier. Ethan sat across from me, his fingers tracing the rim of his mug, his eyes searching mine for answers I wasn't sure I had. The storm outside had settled into a steady drizzle, but inside my apartment, the tension was a living thing, coiling tighter with every word. Talk to me, Lucas, Ethan said, his voice low, almost a plea. What's been going on with you? Why tonight? I stared into my coffee, the dark surface reflecting the dim kitchen light. Where did I even start? The job loss was just the latest blow in a string of failures, missed opportunities. Friendships I'd let fade. A life I barely recognized. But the truth was, Ethan wasn't asking about my resume. He wanted to know why I'd cracked open the door to our past. I don't know who I am anymore, I admitted, the words slipping out before I could stop them. I thought I had it all figured out: job, stability, control. But it's all gone, and I'm just lost. Ethan's expression softened, but he didn't interrupt. He'd always been good at that, listening without judgment, letting me unravel at my own pace. It was one of the things I'd loved about him, and one of the things I'd pushed away when it felt too real. When we were together, I continued, my voice unsteady. I thought I needed to be someone else. Someone who had it all together. I pushed you away because I was scared I'd drag you down with me. He leaned back, crossing his arms, his jaw tight. You didn't trust me to handle it, he said, not accusing, just stating a fact. You decided I couldn't deal with your mess. I winced, because he was right. I'd always seen Ethan as this bright, untouchable force, his art, his passion, his ability to find beauty in the chaos. I'd convinced myself I was too broken to fit into his world, too practical for his dreams. I thought I was protecting you, I said, but I was just protecting myself. Ethan's eyes darkened, a flicker of the old hurt resurfacing. Do you know what it was like? Watching you walk away. I spent months wondering what I did wrong, what I could have done differently. The guilt hit like a tidal wave, threatening to drown me. You didn't do anything wrong, I said, my voice cracking. It was me. All me. He shook his head, a sad smile tugging at his lips. That's the thing, Lucas. It's never just one person. We both made mistakes. I should have fought harder for you. The words hung between us, heavy with what-ifs. I wanted to reach across the table, to take his hand and tell him it wasn't too late. But fear kept me rooted. Instead, I asked, what about you? What's your life like now? Ethan hesitated, his fingers tightening around the mug. I'm still painting, he said finally. Got a small studio downtown. A few shows lined up. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. I could hear the pride in his voice, the quiet strength that had always drawn me to him. That's amazing, I said, meaning it. You're doing what you love. He shrugged, but his eyes held mine. It's not the same without you. I used to paint for you. You know, even after you left. My breath caught, a sharp pain twisting in my chest. I remembered the nights he'd show me his work, the way his face lit up when I saw something he'd poured his soul into. I'd been his muse, his anchor, and I'd thrown it all away. Ethan, I stopped, unsure how to finish. I'm sorry. I love you. Neither felt like enough. He leaned forward, closing the distance between us. Don't do that, he said softly. Don't shut down. Just stay with me. Okay. Right here. Right now. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. We talked for hours, the conversation weaving through memories and regrets. He told me about the gallery that bought his first painting, the one inspired by our trip to the Oregon coast. I told him about the job I'd hated, the one that paid the bills but left me empty. We laughed about the time we got lost hiking, cried over the fights we couldn't take back. As the sky lightened outside, the rain finally stopping, I realized something. This was the most honest I'd been in years. With Ethan, I didn't have to pretend. I didn't have to be the guy with all the answers. I could just be me. Do you ever think about us? I asked, my voice barely audible. What we could have been. Ethan's gaze softened, a warmth there that made my heart ache. Every day, he said, but I don't want to live in the past. Lucas, I want to know what's possible now. The words were a lifeline, fragile but real. I reached for his hand, my fingers brushing his. And for the first time that night, I didn't pull away. His hand closed around mine, warm and steady, and I felt something shift inside me, a crack in the walls I'd built, letting light seep through. Ethan's hand in mine felt like an anchor, grounding me in a moment I wasn't sure I deserved. The kitchen was quiet now. The coffee long gone cold. But neither of us moved. Outside, the first rays of dawn painted the Seattle skyline in soft pinks and golds. A stark contrast to the storm that had brought us here. I don't know how to do this, I admitted, my thumb tracing the edge of his palm. Us. Again. Or whatever this is. Ethan's lips curved into a small, tentative smile. We don't have to know. Not yet. We just have to try. Trying sounded simple, but it wasn't. Not when every step forward meant facing the wreckage of our past. I pulled my hand back. Not because I wanted to, but because the weight of his words was too much. What if we mess it up again? I asked, my voice raw. What if I mess it up? He leaned back, studying me like he could see through every layer I'd built. Then we mess it up. But at least we'll know we tried. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe in second chances. But doubt clung to me like damp clothes. You make it sound so easy, I said, a bitter edge creeping in. Like we can just pick up where we left off. It's not easy. He shot back, his voice firm but not unkind. It's going to be messy and hard. And we'll probably fight like hell. But I'd rather fight with you than live without you. His words hit me like a freight train, knocking the air from my lungs. I stood, pacing the small kitchen, needing to move, to shake off the fear clawing at me. You don't know what you're signing up for, I said. I'm not the guy you loved anymore. I'm unemployed. I'm broke. I'm human. Ethan interrupted, standing to meet me. You think I care about your job? Your bank account? I loved you, Lucas, not your resume. I stopped pacing, my back to the counter, trapped by his gaze. Why? I asked, the question spilling out before I could stop it. Why do you still care? After everything I did. Ethan stepped closer, close enough that I could see the faint scar above his eyebrow, the one from a clumsy fall during our first year together. Because you're still you, he said simply. The guy who stayed up all night helping me finish a painting. The guy who made me laugh when I thought I couldn't. The guy who broke my heart but never stopped owning it. Tears stung my eyes, and I blinked them back, refusing to let them fall. I don't deserve you, I whispered. Maybe not, he said, his voice softening. But I'm here anyway. For a moment, we just stood there, the space between us charged with possibility. Then, slowly, he reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek. It was a small gesture, but it felt like the world shifting beneath my feet. I leaned into his touch, closing my eyes, letting myself feel him for the first time in years. We need to talk about what happened, he said quietly, his hand lingering. Not just tonight. All of it. I nodded, knowing he was right. The past wasn't something we could ignore, no matter how much we wanted to. Okay, I said. But not here. Not like this. He raised an eyebrow, a spark of the old mischief in his eyes. What? You don't want to hash out our breakup in your disaster of a kitchen? I laughed. A real laugh. The kind that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. How about breakfast? There's a diner down the street. Neutral ground. Deal, he said, his smile mirroring mine. But you're paying. I'm a starving artist. Remember? We left the apartment, stepping into the cool morning air. The city was waking up. Delivery trucks rumbling. Joggers weaving through the streets. The diner was a hole in the wall, All cracked vinyl booths and greasy menus. But it felt right. We slid into a booth by the window, the smell of bacon and coffee wrapping around us like a warm blanket. Over pancakes and too strong coffee, we started to talk about the fights, the silences, the way I'd shut him out when things got hard. He told me about the months after our breakup, how he'd thrown himself into his art to escape the pain. I told him about the nights I'd spent staring at my phone, wanting to call but too afraid to try. It wasn't easy. Every word felt like peeling back a scab, exposing wounds that hadn't fully healed. But with every confession, every shared glance, I felt the distance between us shrink. Just a little. By the time we finished, the sun was high, and the diner was crowded with the lunch rush. Ethan looked at me, his expression softer than I'd seen it all night. "So," he said, leaning back, "what's next?" I took a deep breath, the weight of the question settling over me. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I want to find out. With you." He smiled, a real smile, the kind that made my heart stutter. "Then let's do that," he said, one step at a time. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed above us, but Ethan's smile was brighter, cutting through the haze of my doubts. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope, fragile but stubborn, like a flower pushing through cracked pavement. We paid the bill split, despite his protests, and stepped back into the Seattle morning, the city alive with possibility. "Where to now?" Ethan asked, shoving his hands into his jacket pockets. His tone was casual, but his eyes held a question bigger than the words. I hesitated, glancing down the street toward the waterfront. "Walk with me," I asked. "I need air." He nodded, falling into step beside me. Our shoulders brushed as we walked, a quiet reminder of how natural this used to be. The city hummed around us, street vendors calling out, buses groaning, seagulls circling above the Puget Sound. We didn't talk much at first, just let the rhythm of our steps fill the silence. It felt good, like slipping into an old song you still know by heart. We ended up at Pike Place Market, the crowds parting around us as we wandered past stalls of flowers and fish. Ethan stopped at a display of handmade journals, running his fingers over the leather covers. "You used to write in these," he said, glancing at me. "You still do?" I shook my head, a pang of guilt hitting me. "Not really. Stopped when, well, you know." He nodded, his expression unreadable. "You should start again. You were good." The compliment caught me off guard, warming me more than I wanted to admit. "Maybe," I said, deflecting. "What about you? Still painting those crazy abstracts?" He grinned, the kind that crinkled his eyes. "Crazy? You love them." I did, I admitted, my voice softer. "Still do." We kept walking, the conversation light but laced with meaning. He told me about his latest piece, a mural for a community center, vibrant and chaotic like him. I told him about the novel I'd started and abandoned, the one he'd always pushed me to finish. It was easy, too easy, to fall back into thesis. Together, sharing pieces of ourselves. But the ease didn't erase the tension. Every laugh, every glance, carried the weight of what we hadn't resolved. We stopped at a bench overlooking the water, the Space Needle looming in the distance. I sat, my hands clasped tight, and Ethan joined me, his knee brushing mine. "We can't just pretend it's all okay," I said finally, staring at the waves. "There's so much we haven't dealt with." I know, he said, his voice steady. But we're here now. That's something. I turned to him, searching his face. What do you want? Ethan. Really? He didn't answer right away, his gaze fixed on the horizon. I want us to be honest, he said at last. No more hiding. No more running. I want to know you again. Lucas. The real you. Not the version you think you have to be. His words cut deep, exposing the fear I'd carried for years that I wasn't enough. That I'd never be enough. What if the real me isn't what you want? I asked, my voice barely audible. He turned to me, his eyes fierce. Then we figure it out. Together. But I'm not walking away this time. Not unless you tell me to. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to trust that we could rebuild what we'd lost. But the past was a shadow. Always lurking. What about your family? I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. They hated me. They still do. Don't they? Ethan's face tightened, a flicker of pain crossing it. His family had been a sore point, especially his father, who'd never accepted us. They don't get a say, he said firmly. Not anymore. I nodded, but the doubt lingered. His father's disapproval had been a constant pressure, one of the reasons I'd pulled away. And what about you? I asked. Are you sure you want this? Me? He reached for my hand, his grip steady. I'm sure, he said. But it's not just about me. What do you want? Lucas. The question hit like a spotlight, forcing me to face the truth. I wanted him, had always wanted him, but I was terrified of what that meant. Of failing him again. Of failing myself. I want to try, I said finally, the words feeling like a leap off a cliff. But I'm scared. He squeezed my hand, his smile soft but certain. Me too. But we'll figure it out. We sat there, hands entwined, watching the ferries glide across the water. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe, like the weight of my mistakes wasn't crushing me. It wasn't a promise of forever, but it was a start. As we stood to leave, Ethan nudged my shoulder. You owe me a real date, he said, his tone teasing. None of this diner crap. I laughed, the sound lighter than I'd thought possible. Deal, I said. But you're picking the place. The next few days were a blur of cautious hope. Ethan and I texted. Small messages at first, memes. Quick check-ins. A photo of his latest painting. Each one felt like a brick laid in the foundation of something new. Fragile but growing. I didn't trust it yet. Didn't trust myself. But I couldn't deny the pull to keep trying. He invited me to his studio that weekend. A small space tucked above a bookstore in Capitol Hill. I stood outside the door, my stomach twisting with nerves. The last time I'd been in his studio, we'd fought about money, about time, about everything that didn't matter now. I took a deep breath and knocked. Ethan opened the door, paint smudged on his cheek, his smile bright enough to rival the sunlight streaming through the skylight. You came, he said, like he hadn't been sure I would. Of course, I said, stepping inside. The studio was a riot of color canvases stacked against walls, paint cans scattered like confetti. It was Ethan, chaotic and beautiful, and I felt a pang of nostalgia so sharp it hurt. He showed me his work, pointing out pieces with stories behind theme, a mural inspired by the protests last summer, a portrait of a stranger he'd met at a bus stop. I listened, really listened, and realized how much I'd missed his passion, his way of seeing the world. I'd spent so long focused on what we couldn't fix that I'd forgotten what we'd built. "You're staring," he said, catching my gaze. "You're covered in paint," I countered, reaching out to wipe a streak of blue from his jaw. My fingers lingered, and his eyes softened, a silent question passing between us. He stepped closer, his voice low. "Careful, Lucas. You're going to start something." "Maybe I want to," I said, surprising myself. The air crackled, and for a moment, I thought he'd kiss me. But he pulled back, a teasing grin breaking the tension. "Not yet," he said. "You gotta earn it." I laughed, the sound easing the knot in my chest. "What? Like a painting?" "Exactly," he said, tossing me a brush. "Help me with this one." We painted together, a messy abstract that was more about the act than the result. Our hands brushed. Our laughter filled the room. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. But even as we worked, the past lingered, a quiet reminder of the work we still had to do. That night, we went to a quiet bar, one with fairy lights and jazz drifting from the speakers. Over beers, we dug deeper, talking about the things we'd avoided. He told me about the therapy he'd started after our breakup, how it helped him understand his own role in our fights. I told him about my fear of failure, how it had driven me to push him away when things got hard. "I was so focused on being enough for you," I said, staring at the table. "I forgot how to be enough for myself." Ethan reached across, his hand covering mine. "You're enough," he said, his voice fierce. "You always were." I wanted to believe him, but the doubts were stubborn. "What about your dad?" I asked, the question a knife I couldn't help but wield. "He called me a phase. Ethan said I'd ruin you." Ethan's jaw tightened, but his grip on my hand didn't waver. "He was wrong," he said. "He's wrong about a lot of things. I'm done letting him control my life." I nodded, but the memory of his father's disdain still stung. It wasn't just about use, it was about the world we lived in, the judgments we couldn't escape. "It's not just him," I said. "It's everything. The looks we got, the whispers. I wasn't strong enough to handle it." Ethan's eyes softened, but there was steel behind them. "You don't have to be strong alone," he said. "That's the point. We do it together." His words were a promise, one I wasn't sure I could keep, but I wanted to try. We left the bar, walking through the city's neon glow, our hands brushing but not quite holding. It was enough for now, a step toward something real. As we parted ways, Ethan pulled me into a hug, his arms warm and steady. "See you tomorrow?" he asked, his breath tickling my ear. "Yeah," I said, my voice thick. "Tomorrow." I watched him disappear into the night, my heart full and terrified. We were rebuilding, piece by piece, but the road ahead was uncertain, and I knew the hardest tests were still to come. The weeks that followed were a delicate dance, each moment with Ethan a mix of joy and fear. We spent evenings together, cooking terrible dinners, watching old movies, rediscovering the rhythm of us. But the past was never far, and I knew we couldn't outrun it forever. It came crashing back one Saturday, when Ethan invited me to a gallery opening downtown. His mural was being unveiled, a vibrant piece that captured the spirit of the city's queer community. I was proud of him, prouder than I could say. But the thought of being in a room full of strangers, all eyes on us, made my stomach churn. "You don't have to come," Ethan said, sensing my hesitation. We were in his studio, surrounded by paint cans and half-finished canvases. But I want you there. I nodded, swallowing my nerves. I'll be there, I promised, hoping I could keep it. The gallery was packed, a sea of hipsters and art lovers mingling under bright lights. Ethan was in his element, shaking hands, explaining his work with that infectious passion I loved. I hovered near the back, a glass of cheap wine in hand, feeling like an outsider in his world. Then I saw him, Ethan's father, Richard, standing by the mural, his face a mask of disapproval. My heart sank. I hadn't seen him since the breakup, when he'd cornered me outside our old apartment, his words cutting deeper than I'd ever admitted. You're not good for him, he'd said. You'll hold him back. Now, here he was, a reminder of every doubt I'd ever had. Ethan spotted him too, his smile faltering. He crossed the room, pulling me with him. Dad, he said, his voice tight. Didn't know you were coming. Richard's eyes flicked to me, cold and assessing. I wanted to see what you've been wasting your time on, he said, his tone dripping with disdain. And I see you've brought company. I felt Ethan tense beside me, but he didn't back down. Lucas is with me, he said, his voice steady. And he's staying. Richard's lips thinned, but before he could respond, a woman approached Ethan's sister, Claire, who'd always been kinder than their father deserved. Hey, you too, she said, her smile warm. The mural's incredible. Ethan. Lucas. Good to see you. The tension eased, but only slightly. Richard excused himself, but his presence lingered, a shadow over the night. Ethan pulled me aside, his eyes searching mine. You okay? He asked. No, I admitted, my voice low. But I'm here. He squeezed my hand. A silent thank you. The rest of the night was a blur of small talk and forced smiles. But Ethan never left my side. When we finally left, the city quiet around us, I felt the weight of what we were fighting for. Your dad still hates me, I said as we walked to his car. He doesn't get it, Ethan said, his voice firm. He never will. But that's his problem, not ours. I wanted to believe him, but the doubts were relentless. What if he's right? I asked, stopping in the middle of the sidewalk. What if I'm not good for you? Ethan turned to me, his eyes blazing. Don't you dare, he said. You don't get to decide that. I choose you, Lucas. I always have. His words hit like a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge. I stepped closer, my hands finding his face, and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, but it deepened, years of longing pouring into it. When we pulled apart, breathless, he smiled. Took you long enough, he said. I laughed, the sound shaky but real. I'm slow, I said, but I'm here. We drove back to his place, the city lights blurring past. In his apartment, we didn't talk about the future or the past. We just held each other, the world outside fading away. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And for the first time, I believed we could make it. But life doesn't let you rest. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from my old boss, offering a job in Chicago, a fresh start, but 1,000 miles from Ethan. I stared at the screen, my heart torn between the safety of running and the risk of staying. The voicemail played on repeat in my head as I sat on Ethan's couch, the morning light filtering through his curtains. "Lucas, we've got an opening in Chicago. Good pay. Fresh start. Let me know by Monday." Each word was a tug, pulling me toward the life I'd always thought I wanted: stability, security, a clean slate. But Ethan was sprawled beside me, his head on my chest, his breathing soft and steady, and I couldn't imagine leaving. He stirred, blinking up at me with sleepy eyes. "You're thinking too loud," he mumbled, his voice warm with teasing. "What's wrong?" I hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing down. "I got a job offer," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "In Chicago." His body tensed, but he didn't pull away. "Oh," he said, sitting up slowly. "That's big." "Yeah," I said, staring at my hands. "It's a good opportunity. Better pay, better hours. But it's far." Ethan nodded, his expression carefully neutral. "What do you want to do?" That was the question I'd been dodging my whole life. I'd spent years chasing what I thought I should want, pushing away what I actually needed. I looked at Ethan, at the way his hair fell into his eyes, the way he watched me with a mix of hope and fear. And I knew the answer. "I want you," I said, the words steady despite the storm in my chest. "I want us. I don't care about the job, the money, any of it. I've spent too long running from what matters." His eyes softened, a smile tugging at his lips. "You sure? Chicago's a long way from here." "I'm sure," I said, reaching for his hand. "I'm done running." He squeezed my hand, pulling me closer. "Good," he said, his voice thick. "Because I'm not letting you go this time." We kissed, slow and deep, a promise sealed in the quiet of his apartment. It wasn't the end of our struggles. There'd be more fights, more doubts, more battles with the world and ourselves. But for the first time, I believed we could face them together. The next few months were a whirlwind. I turned down the Chicago job, taking a leap of faith on a local gig instead of freelance writing position that paid less but let me stay in Seattle. Ethan's mural got attention, landing him a commission for another community project. We moved slowly, rebuilding trust with every shared meal, every late-night talk, every moment we chose each other. One evening, we walked along the waterfront, the city sparkling under a clear sky. Ethan stopped, pulling me close. "You know," he said, his voice soft, "that night you called me, I was terrified. But I'm so damn glad you did." I smiled, my heart full. "Me too," I said. "I didn't expect you to show up, but I'm glad you did." He laughed, the sound bright and free. "You and your drunk dialing changed everything." We stood there, wrapped in each other, the future uncertain but ours to shape. Love wasn't a fix for everything. It didn't erase the pain of the past or the challenges ahead. But it was enough to make the fight worth it, to make every step forward a victory. As we walked home, hand in hand, I realized something. The call I'd made that night wasn't just a mistake born of whiskey and regret. It was a choice, a reckless, beautiful choice to reach for what I'd lost. And Ethan, standing at my door in the rain, had chosen me back. In the end, that was what mattered. Not the jobs, the money, or the approval of others. Just us, choosing each other, again and again, against all odds. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was ours, and it was enough.